The journey begins not in the halls of judgment or the weary search for wisdom, but in the heart of a walled garden where the air is thick with the scent of spices and the heat of a rising sun. This is the lore of the sacred flame, a history not of what is seen under the sun, but of the fire that burns within the soul. It is the story of a love that is as strong as death and a passion that many waters cannot quench. The kiss of the mouths. The lore opens with a cry of deep longing. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. This is the lore of the primary thirst. In the previous histories, wine was a symbol of worldly pleasure and the joy of the harvest, but here it is described as a shallow thing compared to the intimacy of the beloved. The soul recognizes that physical sustenance and material wealth are only shadows of the true connection it seeks. The name of the beloved is described as ointment poured forth, a fragrance that fills the room and draws the spirit toward it. This is the lore of the invisible presence. Just as a scent travels before a person enters a room, the reputation and the character of the beloved create an atmosphere of attraction. The virgins, or the companions of the heart, love the beloved because of this internal sweetness. It is a call to follow, to run toward the chambers of the king, where the truth of the heart is revealed in the quiet, the beauty of the sun-scorched skin. A voice speaks from the shadows of the vineyards, a woman who describes herself as black but comely. She warns the daughters of the city not to look upon her with disdain because the sun has looked upon her. This is the lore of the laborer's glow. Her own brothers were angry with her and made her the keeper of the vineyards, causing her skin to darken under the heat of the day. In her service to others, she says, "My own vineyard have I not kept." This is a profound lesson on the hidden beauty of the soul. The world often judges by the external the paleness of the skin or the richness of the garment, but the lore teaches that the marks of labor and the scars of service are the true ornaments of the spirit. Her blackness is not a blemish, but a testament to her endurance and her faithfulness to her task. She is like the tents of Kedar, which are dark and weathered on the outside, but like the curtains of Solomon, which hold majesty within. The search for the shepherd. The woman asks a vital question to the one her soul loves. Tell me, O thou whom my soul loves, where you feed, where you make your flock to rest at noon. For why should I be as one that turns aside by the flocks of your companions? This is the lore of the singular path. In a world filled with many voices and many flocks of philosophy and tradition, the heart seeks the specific resting place of its true shepherd. The search for meaning is often complicated by the companion flocks, the societal expectations, and the loud opinions of the crowd. The soul fears turning aside or wandering aimlessly among these secondary truths. The beloved answers her by telling her to follow the footsteps of the flock and to feed her kids beside the shepherd's tents. This is the lore of the ancient way. Wisdom is found by following the path of those who have walked faithfully before, staying close to the places where the truth is consistently nourished. The jewels of the neck. The beloved speaks to the woman, comparing her to a company of horses in Pharaoh's chariots. This is the lore of the boundless strength. He does not see her as a fragile thing, but as a force of nature, full of grace and power. He observes that her cheeks are comely with rows of jewels, and her neck with chains of gold. These are not merely physical ornaments, but symbols of the graces of the spirit that have been fashioned through her experiences. He promises to make her borders of gold with studs of silver. This is the lore of the divine refinement. The Creator takes the raw beauty of the soul and adds the precious metals of character and wisdom. While the woman saw herself as scorched by the sun, the beloved sees her as a masterpiece in progress. The relationship between the two is a mirror where the soul finally sees its true value, stripped of the insecurities imposed by the brothers or the daughters of the city. The table of the king. The movement concludes with the image of the king sitting at his table, while the spikenard of the woman sends forth its fragrance. She describes the beloved as a bundle of myrrh that lies all night betwixt her breasts, and as a cluster of camphor in the vineyards of En-Gedi. This is the lore of the constant remembrance. Myrrh was used for healing and for preservation, suggesting that the love of the beloved acts as a medicine for the heart and a shield against the decay of the world. The environment changes from the scorched vineyard to a house with beams of cedar and rafters of fir. This is the lore of the living temple. The relationship creates its own shelter, a place of shade and fragrance where the soul can finally rest. The beloved declares, "Behold, you are fair, my love, behold, you are fair, you have dove's eyes." The dove's eye is an eye that has single vision, focusing only on the one it loves. This part of the history ends in the quiet of the green bed, where the noise of the world is shut out, and the fire of the sacred flame begins to glow in the darkness. The garden air grows still as the heat of the day passes, and the voice of the woman rises from the shade of the cedar beams. She does not claim to be a rare or exotic blossom from a distant land, but describes herself as the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valleys. This is the lore of the wild beauty, the realization that the most profound grace is often found in the common fields and the low places where the dew lingers longest. She is a flower that grows where the light of the Creator falls freely, unforced by the hands of men. The lily among the thorns. The beloved responds with a comparison that defines the nature of the soul in a harsh world. As the lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. This is the lore of the soft resilience. The world is often a place of thorns, the sharp edges of competition, the briars of malice, and the thickets of indifference. To be a lily in such a place is to maintain one's softness and fragrance even when surrounded by things that scratch and tear. This imagery suggests that true character is revealed by its contrast to its surroundings. The lily does not become a thorn to protect itself. It remains a lily, trusting in its own nature and the care of the one who planted it. The beloved sees this vulnerability as the highest form of strength. In the history of the sacred flame, The soul is called to remain open and fragrant even when the environment is hostile. For it is the lily that the king comes to gather, not the thorn. The shade of the apple tree. The woman looks upon her beloved and sees him as an apple tree among the trees of the wood. This is the lore of the fruitful shelter. Most trees in the wild would provide only leaves and wood, but the apple tree provides both shade for the weary and food for the hungry. She says, "I sat down under his shadow with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste." This is a movement from the search to the rest. In the previous lore, she was scorched by the sun in the vineyards of others, but now she has found a shadow that is her own. This shelter is not a cold stone wall, but a living, breathing protection that offers sustenance. To sit under the shadow of the beloved is to find a place where the vexation of the spirit, mentioned by the teacher, finally ceases. The fruit represents the words and the presence of the beloved that nourish the inner life, turning the sore travail of existence into a feast of peace. The banqueting house and the banner. The scene shifts as the beloved brings the woman into the banqueting house, and his banner over her is love. This is the lore of the public claim. In the ancient world, a banner was a signal of an army or a royal house, a sign of protection and identity. By placing the banner of love over her, the beloved declares to the world that she belongs to him and is under his guardianship. She cries out, "Stay me with flagons, comfort me with apples, for I am sick of love." This sickness is not a malady of the body, but an overwhelming of the heart. It is the state of a soul that has found what it was looking for and is breathless from the discovery. His left hand is under her head, and his right hand embraces her. This is the lore of the total support, the sense of being held completely by a grace that is both tender and strong. She charges the daughters of the city by the roes and the hinds of the field, that they do not stir up or awake her love until he please. There is a sacred timing to the heart that must not be rushed by the noise of the crowd. The voice of the leaping beloved. Suddenly, the tone changes as the woman hears a sound in the distance. The voice of my beloved. Behold, he comes leaping upon the mountains, skipping upon the hills. This is the lore of the energetic arrival. The beloved is compared to a roe or a young hart, symbols of speed, agility, and youthful vitality. He does not approach with the slow, heavy step of a world-weary traveler, but with the lightness of one who is driven by a joyful purpose. He stands behind the wall, looking forth at the windows, showing himself through the lattice. This is the lore of the veiled invitation. He does not force his way into the house, but he makes his presence known, inviting her to look out and see that a new season has arrived. The wall and the lattice represent the barriers we build around our hearts for safety. The beloved stands just outside these barriers, calling the soul to come forth from its hiding place and join him in the open air of a new day. The winter is past. The movement concludes with one of the most beautiful invitations in all the sacred lore. The beloved speaks to her, saying, "Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, The winter is past, the rain is over and gone. This is the lore of the seasonal shift. He points to the signs of life returning to the earth, the flowers appearing on the earth, the time of the singing of birds, and the voice of the turtle dove heard in the land. The fig tree puts forth her green figs, and the vines with the tender grape give a good smell. The winter of the soul, the season of coldness, isolation, and dormant life, is declared finished. The beloved calls the woman his dove, who is in the clefts of the rock and the secret places of the stairs. He asks to see her countenance and hear her voice, for her voice is sweet and her countenance is comely. This part of the history ends with the command to take us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines. It is a reminder that even in the height of spring, we must guard the tender grapes of our character from the small, hidden habits that would eat away at the fruit of the Spirit before it can ripen. The stillness of the garden is replaced by the deep shadows of the city as the sun disappears and the moon takes its watch. The woman finds herself alone in the quiet of her room, but her heart is restless. This movement explores the lore of the night watch, the realization that the soul often seeks its true home most intensely in the darkness. It is a journey through the secret places where the comfort of the day is gone and only the raw desire of the spirit remains. The search in the shadows. The lore begins with a confession of longing. By night on my bed I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but I found him not. This is the lore of the absent beloved. Even in the place of rest, there is a hunger that sleep cannot satisfy. She realizes that she cannot find the one she loves by staying still. She must rise and go about the city in the streets and in the broad ways. This is the lore of the active pursuit. It teaches that there are seasons when the light of the Creator seems hidden, and the soul must exert itself to find the connection it once enjoyed so freely. She encounters the watchmen who go about the city, those whose job it is to guard the order and the laws of the land. She asks them, "Saw ye him whom my soul loves?" But the watchmen, who deal in the external security of the walls, have no answer for the internal search of the heart. They see the street, but they do not see the flame, the grasp of the heart. It was but a little that she passed from the watchman when she found him whom her soul loves. This is the lore of the immediate discovery. Often, the moment we move past the formal structures and the watchmen of tradition, the truth we seek is waiting just around the bend. She says, "I held him and would not let him go." This is the lore of the tenacious spirit, the refusal to let a moment of divine connection slip away into the mist of the morning. She brings him into her mother's house, into the chamber of her who conceived her. This represents a return to the very origins of her being. She does not keep her love in the public square, but brings it into the most private and foundational part of her life. This is where the sacred flame is nurtured, in the secret places where we are most truly ourselves. Once again, she charges the daughters of the city by the roes and the hinds of the field to let the love rest and not be stirred until its own time. The pillars of smoke from the wilderness scene shifts dramatically from the dark city streets to the bright, dusty horizon. A question is asked by the observers. Who is this that comes out of the wilderness like pillars of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all powders of the merchant? This is the lore of the emergent glory. The wilderness is the place of testing and solitude, but the one coming out of it is not weary or defeated. She is transformed into a towering presence of fragrance and fire. This movement suggests that the trials of the desert are what produce the perfume of the Spirit. The pillars of smoke represent the prayers and the presence of a soul that has been refined by the heat of the journey. The world watches in awe as the once scorched keeper of the vineyards returns with a majesty that the city cannot explain. It is the visible evidence of an invisible love, a beauty that has been purchased through the merchants of experience and faith. The chariot of the king. The observers behold the bed, or the palanquin of the king, surrounded by 60 valiant men, the most expert in war. Each man has his sword upon his thigh because of fear in the night. This is the lore of the guarded peace. Even in the heights of royal intimacy, there is a recognition of the spiritual warfare that surrounds the heart. The swords represent the discipline and the boundaries required to protect the sacred flame from the predators of the dark. The chariot is described with exquisite detail. The pillars are of silver, the bottom of gold, and the covering of purple. But the most important detail is the interior, the midst thereof being paved with love for the daughters of Jerusalem. This is the lore of the soft center. While the exterior of the king's work is made of hard, precious metals and guarded by soldiers, the place where the king actually dwells with his people is paved with something much softer and more enduring. The purple represents the royal authority, but the love is the floor upon which the king stands. The day of the heart's gladness. The movement concludes with a call to the daughters of the city. Go forth, O ye daughters of Zion, and behold King Solomon with the crown wherewith his mother crowned him in the day of his espousals, and in the day of the gladness of his heart. This is the lore of the crowned joy. This is not the crown of state power or political conquest, but the crown of relationship. The day of the heart's gladness is the moment when the search in the night and the journey through the wilderness find their fulfillment in a public union. The crown is a gift from the mother, symbolizing that this joy is rooted in the very lineage of life itself. The history of the night watch ends in a celebration of light. The soul that sought the beloved in the dark streets now stands in the center of the city, not as a lonely seeker, but as a participant in the king's own glory. The light of the morning sun spills over the garden walls, and the voice of the beloved rises in a song of profound recognition. He looks upon the woman and sees not just a person, but a landscape of perfection. He begins to describe her beauty with images drawn from the earth, the mountains, and the fields, showing that her character is woven into the very fabric of the world. This is the lore of the radiant countenance, the moment when the soul is seen as it truly is, without the veil of its own insecurities, the vision of the dovely eyes. The song begins with an affirmation. Behold, you are fair, my love. Behold, you are fair. You have dove's eyes within your locks. This is the lore of the single gaze. The dove is a creature of peace and focus, and to have dove's eyes is to possess a heart that is not distracted by the many vanities of the world. Her hair is compared to a flock of goats that appear from Mount Gilead, moving in a graceful, rhythmic wave. Her teeth are like a flock of sheep that are even shorn, coming up from the washing, where everyone bears twins, and none is barren among them. This imagery speaks of order and fruitfulness. There is nothing broken or missing in her character. Her speech is described as a scarlet thread, and her talk is comely. Her temples are like a piece of a pomegranate within her locks. This is the lore of the internal sweetness. Just as a pomegranate hides a multitude of bright, sweet seeds beneath a humble skin, her mind is filled with thoughts that are rich and life-giving. She is not a hollow vessel of beauty, but a storehouse of substance, the tower of integrity. The beloved looks at her neck and sees it as the Tower of David builded for an armory, whereon there hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men. This is the lore of the defended spirit. In the ancient world, the neck was a symbol of the will. A neck that is like a tower is a will that is upright, strong, and unbending in the face of evil. The shields represent the victories of the past, the moments where she stood her ground and protected her heart. She is not a fragile flower that can be trampled, but a fortress of integrity. Her strength is what makes her beauty safe. The beloved notes that her two breasts are like two young roes that are twins, which feed among the lilies. This is the lore of the balanced life, a state of grace and nourishment that exists in the center of the garden. He declares that he will go to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense until the day breaks and the shadows flee away. He finds in her a landscape of prayer and healing where he can dwell until the darkness of the world is gone. The call from the lion's den. The tone of the song shifts to a call of rescue and invitation. Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse, with me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Amana, from the top of Shenir and Hermon, from the lion's dens, from the mountains of the leopards. This is the lore of the high rescue. The beloved calls her away from the dangerous heights and the places where the predators of the soul dwell. Even the most beautiful spirit can find itself in high places that are filled with loneliness or hidden dangers. The beloved tells her, "You have ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. You have ravished my heart with one of your eyes, with one chain of your neck." This is the lore of the captivated heart. The king, who rules over nations, is himself captured by the simple integrity of a single gaze. He finds her love better than wine, and the smell of her ointments better than all spices. Her lips drop as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under her tongue. This signifies that her words are both sweet to the taste and nourishing to the soul, providing the milk of kindness and the honey of wisdom. The garden enclosed. The beloved then speaks a profound mystery. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. This is the lore of the sacred boundary. A garden that is enclosed is a garden that is protected from the trampling feet of the crowd. It is a private space intended only for the one who planted it. Her heart is not a public park where anyone can wander. It is a sealed fountain whose waters are kept pure and cool for the king alone. This enclosure is what allows the plants within to flourish. He describes her plants as an orchard of pomegranates with pleasant fruits, camphor, and spikenard. There is saffron, calamus, cinnamon, and all trees of frankincense, with myrrh and aloes, and all the chief spices. This is the lore of the diverse fragrance. Within the walls of her character, every kind of virtue has room to grow. She is a fountain of gardens and a well of living waters, and streams from the mountains of Lebanon. She is not a stagnant pool, but a flowing source of life that brings refreshment to everything she touches. The breath of the north and south winds. The movement concludes with a call to the elements. Awake, O north wind, and come, thou south, blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. This is the lore of the necessary wind. The north wind is cold and biting, representing the trials and the winter of life. The south wind is warm and gentle, representing the seasons of comfort and prosperity. The beloved calls for both winds to blow upon the garden. He understands that it is the wind, the movement of life's circumstances, that carries the fragrance of the spices over the wall. Without the wind, the garden's sweetness stays hidden within itself. The woman responds to this call with a bold invitation of her own. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruits. This part of the history ends with the soul offering itself completely to the one who loves it. She no longer fears the north wind or the enclosure. She invites the beloved to find his delight in the fruit that his own love has brought to ripeness. The garden shifts into a twilight of the spirit, where the warmth of the previous song is replaced by the chill of a missed opportunity. This movement explores the lore of the sleepy heart, the realization that even in the height of a sacred connection, the soul can grow heavy and slow. It is a history of the delayed response, teaching that the flame must be tended with vigilance, for the beloved does not always wait at the door when the heart is too tired to rise. The voice at the latched door. The lore begins with a state of half-awareness. I sleep, but my heart wakes. It is the voice of my beloved that knocks. This is the lore of the divided will. The spirit is willing and recognizes the call, but the flesh is heavy and anchored to the comforts of the bed. The beloved calls out with a voice full of tenderness. Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled. For my head is filled with dew, and my locks with the drops of the night. He comes from the darkness, seeking the warmth of the garden he has praised. However, the woman hesitates. She makes excuses based on her own comfort. I have put off my coat, how shall I put it on? I have washed my feet, how shall I realize them? This is the lore of the trivial barrier. She allows the small inconveniences of life, the effort of dressing, or the fear of getting her feet dusty, to outweigh the presence of the king. She treats the divine invitation as a burden rather than a privilege. In this moment of self-focus, the door remains barred, and the dew of the beloved's presence begins to evaporate in the cold night air. The turning of the key, the beloved puts his hand by the hole of the door, and her heart is moved for him. This is the lore of the late awakening. The sight of his hand, the hand that has labored and loved, finally breaks through her lethargy. She rises to open to her beloved, and her hands drop with myrrh, and her fingers with sweet-smelling myrrh upon the handles of the lock. This fragrance represents the grace of repentance. Even as she moves to correct her mistake, the sweetness of her character is still present, coating the very mechanism that kept him out. But when she finally draws back the bolt and opens the door, the space is empty. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had withdrawn himself and was gone. My soul failed when he spoke. This is the lore of the empty threshold. The opportunity has passed. He is not a beggar to be kept waiting at the convenience of the sleepy. He is a king whose presence is a gift that must be seized. She sought him, but she could not find him. She called him, but he gave her no answer. The silence of the night becomes a heavy weight, and the myrrh on the lock becomes a bitter reminder of what was lost through a moment of hesitation. The wound of the watchman, driven by a desperate regret, she goes out into the city once more. But this time, the encounter is different from her previous search. The watchmen that went about the city found me. They smote me. They wounded me. The keepers of the walls took away my veil from me. This is the lore of the exposed searcher. Without the veil of the beloved's protection and the timing of his presence, she is vulnerable to the harsh judgment of the world. The watchmen and keepers represent the rigid structures of society that have no mercy for the wandering soul. They see her not as a lover seeking her king, but as a lawbreaker in the night. To lose the veil is to lose one's dignity and privacy. This part of the lore teaches that when we step out of the rhythm of love, we often find ourselves at the mercy of the rhythm of law, which is cold and unyielding. She is left wounded and shamed, yet her desire remains unbroken. She charges the daughters of the city that if they find her beloved, they tell him that she is sick of love. The description of the radiant one, the daughters of the city, seeing her state, ask a piercing question. What is your beloved more than another beloved, O thou fairest among women? This is the lore of the challenge of value. They want to know why she endures such shame and pain for this specific one. In response, her voice regains its strength as she describes him. My beloved is white and ruddy, the chiefest among 10,000. This is the lore of the peerless one. She describes him with the same landscape imagery he once used for her. His head is as the most fine gold, his locks are bushy and black as a raven. His eyes are as the eyes of doves by the rivers of waters, washed with milk and fitly set. This signifies a vision that is pure, clear, and focused on truth. His cheeks are as a bed of spices, and his lips like lilies dropping sweet-smelling myrrh. His hands are as gold rings set with the beryl, and his belly is as bright ivory overlaid with sapphires. These images represent a character that is both precious and firmly anchored. He is not a vapor, he is a monument of gold and stone, the standard of excellence. The description continues down to his legs, which are as pillars of marble set upon sockets of fine gold. His countenance is as Lebanon, excellent as the cedars. This is the lore of the living strength. He is upright, enduring, and provides shade for all who seek him. She concludes her song by saying, "His mouth is most sweet, yea, he is altogether lovely. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem." This is the lore of the integrated beloved. He is not just a lover who stirs the emotions, but a friend who walks beside the soul in the daily labor of the vineyard. By describing him in such detail, she re-anchors her own heart. The shame of the watchman and the loss of the veil fade in comparison to the altogether lovely nature of the one she seeks. The daughters of the city, moved by her vision, stop questioning her and begin to ask where he has gone, so that they might seek him with her. The movement ends with the searchers united, moving toward the garden where the spices grow. The searchers move through the city gates as the first light of dawn begins to touch the stone walls. The daughters of Jerusalem, moved by the woman's song of the peerless one, ask where the beloved has turned aside so they may seek him too. The woman knows the answer now. Her heart is no longer sleepy, and her vision is no longer clouded by the walls of her room. This movement explores the lore of the return to the garden, the realization that the beloved is always found where the work of growth and the fragrance of grace are present. The gathering of the lilies. The lore begins with a confident declaration. My beloved is gone down into his garden, to the beds of spices, to feed in the gardens, and to gather lilies. This is the lore of the divine husbandman. He did not leave in anger, but returned to the place of his labor. He is found among the spices, the virtues that have been carefully cultivated, and among the lilies, those souls that remain soft and pure in a world of thorns. The woman affirms her identity once more. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feeds among the lilies. This is the lore of the mutual possession. The distance of the night watch is closed. The I am of the soul is joined to the He is of the Creator. This bond is not a chain of duty, but a garden of nourishment. By identifying herself with the lilies, she places herself back in the path of the shepherd. He does not need to be chased through the streets. He is found by those who return to the beds of spices within their own character, the terrible majesty of the banners. The beloved speaks again, and his words are full of awe. He looks upon the woman and says, You are beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah, comely as Jerusalem, terrible as an army with banners. This is the lore of the formidable grace. Tirzah was a city of beauty, and Jerusalem was a city of peace and royal power. But the phrase, terrible as an army with banners, introduces a new element to the sacred flame. True beauty is not merely a passive or decorative thing. It is a force that commands respect and even a holy fear. A soul that has been refined by the search in the night, that has survived the watchman, and that has remained faithful to the one shepherd, carries a spiritual authority. Like a disciplined army moving under the silken banners of its king, her presence is orderly, focused, and invincible. This is the lore of the spiritual rank. The beloved is ravished by her gaze, because it carries the weight of a person who has chosen the light over the shadows. The vision of the morning. The beloved describes the effect she has on the world around her. Who is she that looks forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners? This is the lore of the celestial progress. She is compared to the three great lights of the sky. As the morning, she brings hope and the end of the night. As the moon, she reflects the light of the Creator in the dark times. As the sun, she possesses a clarity and a heat that burns away the mist of vanity. This imagery suggests that the soul's journey is an ascension. We begin as a flickering candle in the night, but through the discipline of love, we become like the clear sun. There's no longer any dead fly in the ointment or any folly in the heart. She has become a source of light for others. The beloved turns his eyes away from her for a moment, saying her gaze is too strong for him, which is a poetic way of acknowledging that her spiritual growth has reached a level of breathtaking maturity. The descent to the nut garden. The lore moves to a moment of quiet reflection. I went down into the garden of nuts to see the fruits of the valley, and to see whether the vine flourished and the pomegranates budded. This is the lore of the hidden inspection. A garden of nuts represents a place of hard shells and deep roots. It is the place where wisdom is protected, and where the meat of the truth must be cracked open with effort. The beloved is checking on the progress of the tender grapes and the budding pomegranates. This signifies that the sacred flame is not just about the heights of emotion, but about the practical flourishing of the life. Are the vines of kindness growing? Are the pomegranates of peace budding? The beloved is interested in the fruits of the valley, the things produced in the low, humble places of daily existence. This part of the history teaches that the highest spiritual states are validated by the lowest, most practical virtues. The chariots of Aminadab. The movement concludes with a sudden and mysterious shift. Or ever I was aware, my soul made me like the chariots of Aminadab. This is the lore of the swift elevation. Aminadab was known for the speed and excellence of his chariots. The woman realizes that her pursuit of the beloved and her return to the garden have caught her up in a movement that is faster and more powerful than she imagined. She is no longer the weary keeper of the vineyards or the wounded searcher in the streets. She has been set upon a chariot of the prince. The daughters of the city cry out to her, "Return, return, O Shulamite, return, return, that we may look upon you." They see the change in her and want to understand the company of two armies that they see within her. She has become a bridge between the earth and the sky, a person in whom the army of the world and the army of the light have finally found a peace. This part of the history ends with the soul in full flight, moving toward a union that the sun itself cannot dim. The Shulamite stands before the watchers, and her presence is no longer that of a common laborer in the fields. The daughters of the city see her as she moves, and they ask what they should see in her. The beloved answers for them, describing her as she participates in the lore of the prince's daughter. This movement explores the beauty of a life that has been set in motion by a divine purpose, teaching that when the soul walks in alignment with its source, every step becomes a part of a royal dance. The shoes of the prince's daughter. The song begins with an observation of her movement. How beautiful are your feet with shoes, O prince's daughter. The joints of your thighs are like jewels, the work of the hands of a cunning workman. This is the lore of the prepared path. In the previous histories, she was the one with sun-scorched skin and dusty feet. But now she is recognized for her nobility. The shoes represent the readiness of the spirit to walk the path of the light. She is no longer wandering or lost. Her feet are shod with the peace that comes from knowing her true identity. The joints of the thighs are compared to jewels, suggesting that even the hidden parts of her character, the inner strength that supports her movement, are a masterpiece of the cunning workman, the creator. This is a celebration of the integrated self. Her beauty is not a mask she wears, but a quality that goes down to the very structure of her being. She moves with a grace that is both fluid and firm, showing that the work of the hands of the Creator is most visible in a person who has allowed their life to be shaped by the discipline of love. The goblet of the mingled wine. The beloved continues his description, moving to the center of her being. Your navel is like a round goblet, which wants not liquor. Your belly is like a heap of wheat set about with lilies. This is the lore of the sustaining center. The goblet and the wheat are symbols of life-giving nourishment. A heap of wheat represents a harvest that can feed many, and the lilies that surround it suggest that this productivity is not harsh or dry, but is bordered by softness and purity. This imagery speaks of the soul as a provider. The woman is no longer just a seeker of bread. She has become a source of life for others. Her internal life is full of the mingled wine of wisdom and the wheat of substance. This is the goal of the sacred flame, that the individual soul would become a garden that feeds the hungry world. She possesses a roundness or a completeness of character that wants for nothing, proving that the search in the night has resulted in a permanent internal abundance. The Tower of Ivory and the pools of Heshbon. The beloved looks at her countenance and sees a landscape of clarity and strength. Your neck is as a tower of ivory, your eyes like the fish pools in Heshbon by the gate of Bath Rabbim. Your nose is as the Tower of Lebanon, which looks toward Damascus. This is the lore of the elevated vision. The Tower of Ivory represents a will that is precious, white, and unyielding. The pools of Heshbon are known for their deep, still waters that reflect the sky with perfect accuracy. To have eyes like these pools is to possess a reflective mind. She does not react with the turbulence of the world, but holds the light in the stillness of her spirit. The Tower of Lebanon, looking toward the horizon, represents a discerning spirit that can smell the approach of both the friend and the foe from a distance. She is not easily deceived, for her vision is set on a high place. Her head is like Carmel, a mountain known for its fertility and its forests, and the hair of her head is like purple, the color of royalty. The king is held in the galleries by the sight of her, meaning his own heart is captured by the majesty of her character. The palm tree of desired fruit. The beloved expresses his longing for her stature. How fair and how pleasant are you, O love, for delights. This your stature is like to a palm tree, and your breasts to clusters of grapes. This is the lore of the upright growth. The palm tree is a symbol of a life that grows straight toward the sun, even in the desert. It is a tree that provides shade, fruit, and beauty in the most difficult environments. The beloved says, I will go up to the palm tree. I will take hold of the boughs thereof. This is the lore of the shared harvest. He finds in her a sweetness that is like the best wine for his beloved, that goes down sweetly, causing the lips of those that are asleep to speak. True wisdom and true love have the power to wake up the sleepy heart and to give voice to those who have been silent. The relationship is a constant exchange of life, where the fruit of one becomes the sustenance of the other, the invitation to the fields. The movement concludes with the woman's response to the beloved's praise. She does not linger in the admiration of the city, but calls him back to the labor of the land. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field. Let us lodge in the villages. This is the lore of the practical union. She understands that the height of their love is meant to be lived out in the common soil of the villages. She wants to get up early to the vineyards to see if the vine flourishes and the tender grape appears. She promises to give him her loves there, among the mandrakes that give a smell, and the pleasant fruits she has laid up, both new and old. This is the lore of the integrated memory. She offers him the new discoveries of their recent journey and the old foundations of her character. The part of the history ends with the two of them leaving the city gates, moving toward the fields where the work of the Creator is written in the budding of every leaf and the ripening of every fruit. The woman turns her gaze from the fields back to the beloved, expressing a desire for a bond that transcends the boundaries of the home and the city. She speaks of a connection so deep and natural that it would be understood by all who see it, even in the public streets. This movement explores the lore of the brother's kiss, the realization that the highest love is one that carries the familiarity of family and the purity of a shared origin. It is the search for a way to carry the sacred flame into the world without shame or interruption. The familiarity of the spirit. The lore begins with a poignant wish. Oh, that you were as my brother, that sucked the breasts of my mother. When I should find you without, I would kiss you. Yea, I should not be despised. This is the lore of the unveiled affection. In the ancient world, public displays of romantic love were often restricted or misunderstood, but the bond between siblings was recognized as a natural and protected grace. By wishing the beloved were as a brother, she is seeking a love that is homegrown, a connection that feels as old as life itself. This imagery speaks of the unity of the source. She desires a relationship where there is no stranger between them, where their histories are so intertwined that to love the other is as natural as breathing. This is the goal of the spirit, to find a connection to the light that is so foundational that it can be expressed in the without, the public square, without fear of the watchman or the judgment of the daughters of the city. It is a love that has nothing to hide and everything to share. The house of the mother. The woman promises to lead her beloved into her mother's house, where he would instruct her. This is the lore of the ancestral wisdom. The mother's house represents the place of beginning, the root of the soul's education. She is not seeking to teach the beloved, but to be taught by him in the place where her life was first shaped. She would cause him to drink of spiced wine, of the juice of her pomegranate. This is the lore of the shared cup. The spiced wine represents the complexity of her experiences, and the pomegranate represents the internal sweetness of her character. To share this cup is to invite the beloved into the very core of her identity. It is an act of total vulnerability, where the new wine of the current moment is mixed with the old spices of her history. In this sacred space, the left hand of the beloved is under her head, and his right hand embraces her, signifying a peace that is both foundational and active. The lean of the wilderness. The scene shifts as the watchers in the city look out toward the horizon. They ask a question that has become a recurring theme in the history. Who is this that comes up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved? This is the lore of the dependent strength. In the previous movements, she emerged from the desert as pillars of smoke, but now she emerges leaning. This is a profound lesson on the maturity of the spirit. True growth is not moving from dependence to independence, but moving from independence to a willing dependence on the light. The wilderness is the place of testing that breaks the pride of the self-made soul. She no longer walks by her own might. She walks by leaning her full weight upon the one she loves. The wilderness has not defeated her. It has taught her where her true strength lies. She is not dragged through the sand. She is supported by a grace that makes her movement possible. The awakening under the apple tree. The beloved speaks, reminding her of where their journey truly began. I raised you up under the apple tree. There your mother brought you forth. There she brought you forth that bare you. This is the lore of the sacred origin. He reminds her that he was there at the moment of her spiritual birth. The apple tree, which earlier provided shade and fruit, is now revealed as the place of her beginning. This imagery suggests that the sacred flame is eternal. The beloved did not find her by accident. He raised her up from the very start. He has been the silent witness to her growth, from a child of the vineyards to a prince's daughter. This part of the lore teaches that we do not create our connection to the light, we remember it. The apple tree is a monument to a grace that was present before we were even aware of the sun. Our life is a return to a shade that has always been waiting for us. The charge of the rose. The movement concludes with the familiar refrain, but with an added weight of experience. She charges the daughters of Jerusalem once more, that ye stir not up, nor awake my love, until he please. This is the lore of the protected quiet. Having walked through the city, survived the watchmen, and leaned through the wilderness, she knows the value of the silence. She understands that the sacred flame is a delicate thing that cannot be forced by the stirring of human effort or the noise of public expectation. The rose and the hinds represent the natural, unforced timing of the heart. To awake the love before its time is to risk the dead fly in the ointment. She stands at the edge of the wilderness, supported by the beloved, guarding the peace of the garden with a wisdom that has been bought with the juice of the pomegranate. The part ends in a moment of absolute stillness, where the only movement is the breath of the two travelers as they prepare for the final ascent. The travelers stand at the edge of the wilderness, the heat of the desert behind them, and the cool shade of the garden ahead. The woman turns to the beloved and speaks the most profound command of the history. This movement explores the lore of the seal upon the heart, the realization that true love is not a passing vapor or a seasonal flower, but a permanent mark that changes the very nature of the soul. It is a transition from the search to the settlement, where the flame becomes an eternal fire, the signature of the spirit. The lore begins with a request for permanence. Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. This is the lore of the indelible mark. In the ancient world, a seal was a sign of ownership, authority, and identity. To be set as a seal upon the heart is to be the primary motivation of every internal thought. To be set upon the arm is to be the strength behind every external action. This is the lore of the total belonging. She is asking for a connection that is not just felt, but signed. It suggests that the sacred flame is not satisfied with a temporary visit. It seeks to be the seal that validates the entire life. The heart is the secret place, and the arm is the public place. By placing the seal on both, the beloved declares that his inner life and his outer work are dedicated to the one he loves. It is the end of the divided will, where the soul finally finds its permanent home in the character of the Creator. The strength of the grave. The woman provides the reason for the seal. For love is strong as death, jealousy is cruel as the grave. This is the lore of the final force. The teacher of Ecclesiastes observed that death is the one event that conquers all. But the Song of Songs declares that love is its equal. Death is an irresistible force that takes everything away. But love is an irresistible force that gives everything away. Jealousy, mentioned here, is not the petty envy of the world, but the relentless protection of the sacred. Just as the grave refuses to let go of what it holds, the sacred flame refuses to let go of the soul it has claimed. It is cruel only to the things that would try to come between the heart and the light. This part of the lore teaches that the love of the Creator is a fierce grace that will burn away every dead fly and every little fox until only the pure gold of the connection remains, the coals of the vehement flame. The description of this love reaches its peak. The coals thereof are coals of fire, which has a most vehement flame. This is the lore of the internal furnace. Unlike the crackling of thorns mentioned in the previous histories, which made noise but gave no heat, this flame is built on coals. These are the deep, glowing embers of character and experience that burn long after the initial excitement has passed. This is the lore of the unquenchable fire. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. The many waters represent the trials, the disappointments, and the vexations of the spirit that life throws at the soul. The floods are the overwhelming sorrows of the human condition, but the sacred flame does not burn on external fuel, it burns from within. Therefore, the storms of the world only serve to test its strength, not to extinguish its heat. The soul that is anchored in this love can stand in the middle of the flood and not be moved. The price of the household. The lore reflects on the value of this connection. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would utterly be contemned. This is the lore of the priceless gift. In a world where everything has a price and everything can be bought or sold, the sacred flame remains the one thing that cannot be purchased. The substance of the house, the gold, the silver, and the lands is treated with contempt when offered as a trade for love. This is a rebuke to the merchant's mind that tries to bargain with the light. You cannot earn the kiss of the mouth or the shade of the apple tree. Love is a gift that must be received with humble hands, not a commodity to be acquired with full pockets. This part of the history teaches that the poorest laborer in the vineyard who possesses the flame is wealthier than the king who has only the substance of his palace. True wealth is not what you have in your house, but who you are as a seal upon the heart. The awakening of the little sister. The movement concludes with a turn toward others. We have a little sister, and she has no breasts. What shall we do for our sister in the day when she shall be spoken for? This is the lore of the future grace. The woman, now mature and secure in her union, looks back at those who are still in the morning of their growth. The little sister represents the soul that is not yet ready for the fullness of the flame. Woman asks how to prepare this younger soul for its own encounter with the beloved. She is moving from the role of the seeker to the role of the guardian. She understands that the sacred flame is a legacy to be passed down. The day when she shall be spoken for is the moment when the little sister will hear the voice at the latched door. This part of the lore ends with the woman standing as a bridge between the now and the next, ensuring that the path through the wilderness remains open for the ones who follow. The woman reflects on the development of the soul, considering the little sister, who is not yet mature. She proposes 2 ways a person might face the world and its influences. This movement explores the lore of the wall and the door, the realization that the structure of our character determines how the light interacts with us. It is a lesson on the architecture of the spirit, teaching that we must decide whether we are a barrier to folly or an entrance for grace. The fortress of the wall. The lore poses a choice. If she be a wall, we will build upon her a palace of silver. This is the lore of the unshakable foundation. A wall is a symbol of boundaries, discipline, and resistance. It is the soul that knows how to say no to the little foxes and the dead flies. Because the wall is steady and upright, it can support the weight of a palace of silver. This imagery suggests that nobility is built on boundaries. Silver represents refinement and purity, but it cannot be suspended in the air. It requires the stone of a firm character to hold it up. The palace is the internal dwelling place of the light. If the soul is a wall, the Creator can entrust it with the treasures of wisdom and honor. A wall does not move with the wind or crumble under the pressure of the crowd. It stands as a permanent fixture in the landscape of the world, providing a surface upon which the beauty of the king can be displayed. The passage of the door. The second choice is presented. And if she be a door, we will enclose her with boards of cedar. This is the lore of the guarded entrance. A door is a symbol of transition and accessibility. While a wall is meant to keep things out, a door is meant to let things in. However, a door that swings too freely can let in the predator as easily as the beloved. Therefore, it must be enclosed with boards of cedar. Cedar is a wood known for its strength, its fragrance, and its resistance to decay. To enclose a door with cedar is to provide it with discernment. It is the training of the heart to know when to open and when to stay shut. This is the lore of the fragrant boundary. Even an open and welcoming soul must have a framework of strength. The cedar boards ensure that the door does not warp under the heat of passion or rot in the dampness of sorrow. The soul remains a useful entrance for the light, but it is no longer a broken hedge where the serpent can enter. The peace of the mature soul. The woman speaks of her own journey through these stages. I am a wall, and my breasts like towers. Then was I in his eyes as one that found favor. This is the lore of the found peace. She recognizes that she has reached the maturity of the wall. She is no longer the scorched keeper of the vineyards. She is a fortress of integrity. Her towers represent her ability to see the horizon and to provide a high place for the sacred flame. Because she has established her boundaries, she has found favor or peace. In the ancient tongue, this favor implies a state of wholeness. She is not seeking peace from the world, she is bringing peace to the world. She has become a Sabbath for the beloved. The search through the streets and the wounding by the watchmen are over. She stands as a completed structure, a place where the king is happy to dwell, because the wall is firm and the door is guarded by cedar. The vineyard of Balhaman. The lore shifts to a comparison of two vineyards. Solomon had a vineyard at Balhaman. He let out the vineyard unto keepers. Every one for the fruit thereof was to bring 1,000 pieces of silver. This is the lore of the rented life. Balhaman represents a place of great abundance, but it is a place where the labor is done by keepers who must pay a tax It is a relationship of contract and commerce. In this vineyard, the focus is on the 1,000 pieces of silver, the measurable output, and the external profit. It is a place of heavy responsibility and constant accounting. The teacher of Ecclesiastes spent much of his history in this kind of vineyard, weighing the profit of his labor under the sun. It is a valid work, but it is a work that carries the weight of the tenant. There is a distance between the owner and the fruit, and a cost associated with the tending of the vines. My vineyard, which is mine. The woman contrasts the king's rented vineyard with her own. My vineyard, which is mine, is before me. Thou, O Solomon, must have 1,000, and those that keep the fruit thereof 200. This is the lore of the sovereign possession. She does not rent her heart, she owns it. Her vineyard is before her. It is her constant focus and her personal delight. This is the lore of the free service. She acknowledges the king's portion and the reward for those who help her. But the relationship is no longer one of debt. She gives the 1,000 not because she is a tenant, but because she is a lover. Her service to the light comes from a place of abundance, not a place of tribute. This part of the history teaches that the highest form of character is not one that follows the rules for a reward, but one that manages its own vineyard with such love that the fruit flows naturally to the king. The movement ends with the woman standing in the center of her own flourishing life, a wall that is also a garden. The woman stands in her own vineyard, no longer as a servant under the harsh sun, but as a queen of her own spirit. She has learned the discipline of the wall and the grace of the door, and now she turns her attention to the voices that surround her in the garden. This movement explores the lore of the companion's voice, the realization that while the heart has found its singular focus, it still exists within a community of others who are listening for the same light. It is a lesson on the shared experience of the sacred flame, teaching that the voice of the beloved is often heard most clearly when the ears are attuned to the harmony of the whole garden. The dweller in the gardens, the lore addresses the woman in her new state. You that dwell in the gardens, the companions hearken to your voice. Cause me to hear it. This is the lore of the quiet authority. She is no longer wandering the city streets or searching the broad ways. She has become a dweller. This implies a sense of permanence and belonging. She has cultivated her internal landscape to the point where it is a place of rest for herself and for others. The companions are those who have watched her journey, the friends, the seekers, and the daughters of the city. They hearken to her voice because she speaks from the authority of experience. She has survived the wounding of the watchman and the silence of the night, and therefore her words carry the weight of seasoned truth. However, the beloved makes a specific request. Cause me to hear it. He does not want her to be so occupied with the companions that she forgets to speak to the source of the flame. This is a reminder that even when we become teachers to others, we must remain students of the light. The request for the voice, the beloved's request, cause me to hear it, is a call for unbroken dialogue. This is the lore of the reciprocal call. Throughout the history, it has often been the woman seeking the voice of the beloved, but now the king seeks the voice of the woman. This signifies a relationship that has reached a state of equal exchange. The creator finds delight in the response of the creature. This imagery speaks of the sacredness of expression. Our thoughts, our prayers, and our songs are the spices that the beloved comes to gather. To cause the voice to be heard is to live an authentic life where the internal truth is allowed to find an external sound. The companions listen for their own guidance, but the beloved listens for the sake of the relationship itself. This part of the lore teaches that the greatest gift we can give to the source of our life is the honest expression of our own heart, delivered without the veil of pretense or the noise of vanity. The scent of the mountains. The woman responds to the request with a final, urgent invitation. She does not call him to the city or even to the vineyard of Balhammon, but to a higher place. Make haste, my beloved, and be thou like to a roe or to a young hart upon the mountains of spices. This is the lore of the high ascent. The mountains of spices represent the ultimate peak of the spiritual journey, a place where the air is pure and the scent of every virtue is concentrated. This imagery suggests that the sacred flame is always moving upward. Even after the vineyard is tended and the wall is built, there are always higher mountains to explore. The beloved is compared to a young hart because he possesses the energy and the speed to reach these heights. She is asking him to lead her into a realm of experience that is above the sun. This is the end of the sore travail and the beginning of the eternal flight. They are leaving the low valleys of the search and moving toward the high altitudes of a permanent union. The flight from the lowlands, the call to make haste, is the lore of the divine urgency. In a world that is a mist, there is no time to linger in the lowlands of mediocrity. The woman has learned that the seasons of life change quickly. The winter passes and the flowers appear, but the night also returns. By asking him to flee to the mountains, she is choosing to live in the eternal spring of the high places. This is the lore of the final direction. The history began with a kiss in the chamber and ends with a flight to the mountains. It is a movement from the physical to the spiritual, from the enclosed garden to the infinite horizon. She is no longer afraid of the lion's dens or the mountains of the leopards, for she is moving with the speed of the heart and the strength of the one she leans upon. The mountains of spices are the place where the seal upon the heart is finally and forever satisfied. The echo of the song. The movement concludes with the song fading into the distance. The voices of the companions, the daughters of the city, and the watchmen on the walls grow quiet as the two travelers vanish into the heights. This is the lore of the infinite song. The Song of Solomon does not have a closing gate. It has an opening sky. The story of the sacred flame does not end. It simply changes its key and moves to a higher mountain. The final lesson of the lore is that the search and the union are one. We are always seeking, and we are always being found. The mountains of spices are both the destination and the journey itself. The woman stands as a witness that a life scorched by the sun can become a life radiant as the morning. The sacred flame that began as a spark of longing has become a vehement fire that lightens the way for all who follow. The history ends not in a period, but in a haste, a joyful movement toward the light that never sets. The travelers have vanished into the high ridges, but the fragrance of their passage lingers in the valley below. Those who remain in the gardens, the companions, and the seekers begin to gather the remnants of the journey to understand how a common keeper of the vineyards became a queen of the mountains. This movement explores the lore of the hidden spices, the realization that the true legacy of the sacred flame is not found in the gold of the palace, but in the specific virtues that were crushed and refined during the search. The crushing of the myrrh. The lore reflects on the nature of the spices mentioned throughout the history. Spices like myrrh and frankincense do not release their full scent when they are whole. They must be crushed or burned. This is the lore of the productive sorrow. The woman's journey was marked by moments of crushing the anger of her brothers, the scorching of the sun, and the wounding by the watchman. In the sacred history, these trials are seen as the milling of the soul. The bitterness of the myrrh became a sweet perfume because she did not allow the trials to make her hard, but instead allowed them to make her fragrant. This is the lore of the transmuted pain. The legacy she leaves behind is the proof that the sore travail under the sun can be transformed into a spiritual ointment that heals the heart and draws the beloved closer. The crushing was not an end, but a preparation for the mountains, the storage of the new and old. The woman previously spoke of the pleasant fruits she had laid up at her gates, both new and old. This is the lore of the spiritual storehouse. A life lived in the light is a collection of two types of wisdom. The old fruits are the foundational truths, the laws, the traditions, and the lessons learned from the mother's house. The new fruits are the fresh discoveries, the personal encounters in the night watch, and the sudden revelations under the apple tree. This imagery suggests that the soul is a curator. To have only old fruit is to become dry and legalistic. To have only new fruit is to be unstable and rooted in nothing. The Shulamite's legacy is the balance of the harvest. She honored the roots of her history while embracing the growth of her present. Her gates are a place of abundance because she knew how to preserve the past while making room for the future. This part of the lore teaches that we must keep our gates open to the light so that our storehouse is always being replenished. The pattern of the dance. The companions recall the dance of the two armies they saw within the woman. This is the lore of the harmonized conflict. Every soul is a battlefield where two armies meet: the army of the earth, which seeks comfort and status, and the army of the light, which seeks truth and union. For most, these armies are at war, creating a life of internal friction and vexation of the spirit. In the Shulamite, the conflict became a dance. The two armies found a rhythm. Her physical labor in the vineyard did not fight her spiritual longing, it supported it. Her wall of discipline did not fight her door of grace, it framed it. The legacy of the sacred flame is this internal symphony. She showed that it is possible to live in the world of many waters without being drowned, by turning the struggle into a movement of grace. She did not defeat her human nature. She led it into a royal procession. The echo in the clefts of the rock. The beloved once called to her as a dove in the clefts of the rock, in the secret places of the stairs. This is the lore of the hidden preparation. Much of the woman's beauty was fashioned in places where no one could see her. Before she was terrible as an army with banners in public, she was a dove in the cleft in private. This imagery speaks of the necessity of solitude. The secret places of the stairs are the moments of prayer, meditation, and quiet endurance that happen behind the closed doors of the heart. The legacy teaches that the public radiance is only as strong as the private depth. If the soul has no cleft in the rock to retreat to, it will be withered by the heat of the world. Her history is a call to find our own secret stairs, for it is there that the voice of the beloved is first recognized before it is shouted from the rooftops. The fragrance of the footprints. The movement concludes with the realization that the woman's presence has changed the garden forever. Even though she is gone to the mountains, the scent of Lebanon remains on the leaves. This is the lore of the lingering grace. A soul that has been set as a seal upon the heart leaves a mark on everything it touches. The vineyards of En-Gedi and the beds of spices are sweeter because she once walked through them. The companions look at their own vines and their own tender grapes with new eyes. They understand now that they are not just keepers for 1,000 pieces of silver, but participants in a sacred history. The legacy of the Shulamite is the belief that any soul, no matter how sun-scorched or wounded, can rise to the mountains of spices. The song does not end with a farewell, but with a lingering fragrance that invites the next traveler to make haste and begin their own climb. The garden rests in the quiet before the dawn, a time when the stars begin to fade and the air turns cold with the expectation of the sun. The companions, having meditated on the spices left behind, now look toward the eastern horizon. This movement explores the lore of the morning watch, the state of a soul that has learned to live in the already and the not yet. It is a history of the patient vigil, teaching that the greatest strength of the spirit is found in its ability to wait for the light without losing its fragrance in the dark. The watch for the daybreak. The lore recalls the beloved's promise to stay upon the mountain of myrrh until the day breaks and the shadows flee away. This is the lore of the determined sight. The night is not seen as an endless void, but as a temporary season with a fixed ending. The morning watch is the discipline of keeping the eyes fixed on the horizon, refusing to believe that the darkness is the final word of the world. This imagery speaks of spiritual alertness. The shadows are the doubts, the fears, and the vanities that grow long when the sun is absent. To wait for the daybreak is to maintain a core of heat within the heart while the world is cold. The Shulamite's legacy is the understanding that the fleeing of the shadows is an inevitability. Just as the sun cannot be held back by the mountains, the return of the light cannot be prevented by the trials of the city. The soul remains at the window, not in a state of anxiety, but in a state of focused rest. The voice in the early wind. In the stillness of the watch, the companions begin to notice the subtle movements of the garden. The wind begins to stir the spices, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in the land. This is the lore of the precursor. Before the sun is visible, the creation begins to whisper that the king is near. The early wind carries the scent of the mountains of spices down into the valley, providing a down payment of the joy that is coming. This is the lore of the interior hearing. To hear the voice of the beloved in the early wind requires a heart that has been silenced of its own clamor. The noise of the many books and the endless labor must be put aside to catch the soft rustle of the one shepherd approaching. The watchers learn that the light does not arrive with a shout, but with a gradual unveiling. They prepare their own beds of spices, so that when the king arrives, the garden is ready to respond to his presence with its own burst of fragrance. The gathering of the morning dew. The lore describes the dew that settles on the lilies and the locks of the beloved. My head is filled with dew, and my locks with the drops of the night. This is the lore of the silent refreshment. Dew is the moisture that appears without rain, a gift from the atmosphere that sustains life during the dry seasons. In the sacred history, the dew represents the quiet grace that supports the soul during the night watch. This imagery suggests that growth happens in the dark. While the world sleeps, the dew of the spirit is at work, nourishing the roots and softening the leaves. The companions realize that the drops of the night are not a burden to be wiped away, but a vital sustenance. The beloved carries the night with him, showing that the darkness itself has a purpose in the economy of the garden. The morning watch is a time to gather this dew, to let the quiet influence of the light to come settle into the very pores of the character. The opening of the east gate. The movement reaches its peak as the first golden sliver of the sun appears over the high ridges. This is the lore of the unbarred gate. All the walls, the doors, and the lattices that the soul has managed are now opened wide. The search in the streets and the leaning in the wilderness find their fulfillment in the first light. The king is seen leaping upon the mountains, no longer a shadow through the lattice, but a radiant reality. This is the lore of the visible union. The morning is the time when the secret places of the stairs become the public courts of the palace. The companions see that the Shulamite's flight to the mountains was not an escape, but a pioneering. She went ahead to meet the light so that she could lead it back into the valley. The east gate is the place where the seal upon the heart meets the sun in the sky. It is the moment when the internal flame and the external light become a single, blinding glory. The command to arise. The movement concludes with the echo of the invitation. Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. This is the lore of the final summons. The morning watch ends not in a return to sleep, but in a call to arise. The light is not just something to be beheld, it is a path to be walked. The legacy of the song is the realization that every morning is a new espousal, a fresh opportunity to walk in the sight of the eyes and the joy of the heart. The companions rise from their places in the garden, their own dove's eyes fixed on the rising sun. They understand now that the Song of Songs is a cycle that repeats with every dawn. The winter will return, and the night watch will come again. But the morning is the anchor of their hope. They step out from the shade of the cedar beams and move toward the fields, ready to tend the vines with the strength of those who have seen the King on the mountains of spices. The light of the new day settles over the land, but it is a light that seems to pulse with a deeper life. The vineyards that once felt like places of heavy labor and sun-scorched skin are now seen through the eyes of the Union. This movement explores the lore of the transfigured vineyard, the realization that when the heart is right, the work of the hands is no longer a burden, but a dance. It is the history of the feast of the eternal vine, where the fruit of the earth and the fire of the Spirit are finally merged into one, the wine of the awakened soul. The lore begins with a look at the new wine that flows from the mountain ridges. Your mouth is like the best wine for my beloved, that goes down sweetly, causing the lips of those that are asleep to speak. This is the lore of the resurrected voice. In the earlier histories, wine was a symbol of temporary joy that could lead to vanity. But here it is a medicine that wakes the spirit from its slumber. It is the wine of truth that flows from a heart that has been crushed and refined. This imagery suggests that communication is the fruit of union. When the soul is at peace with the light, every word it speaks carries a nourishing power. The sleepy heart mentioned in the night watch is fully awakened by this sweetness. The vineyard is no longer just a place of production. It is a place of conversation. The labor of tending the vines becomes a way of speaking to the Creator, and the fruit that is produced is a testimony that can wake a sleeping world. The shade of the living arbor. The woman and the beloved walk through the rows of the vineyard, and she notices that the beams of cedar have grown into a living canopy. Our bed is green, the beams of our house are cedar, and our rafters are fir. This is the lore of the organic shelter. The structures they built to protect their love have taken root and are growing. The house is no longer a cold building made of cut wood, but a living forest that provides its own shade and fragrance. This is the lore of the sustainable peace. A peace that is built only on rules and walls must be constantly repaired, but a peace that is grown from the sacred flame sustains itself. The green bed represents a rest that is always fresh and always renewing. The vineyard has been transfigured from a site of sore travail into a living temple. Every leaf and every vine is a part of the architecture of their joy. They do not live for the vineyard, they live within it. And the vineyard responds to their presence by flourishing in ways that Balhaman never could. The mystery of the mandrakes. The lore mentions the mandrakes that give a smell at the gates. The mandrakes give a smell, and at our gates are all manner of pleasant fruits, new and old. This is the lore of the rooted passion. The mandrake was an ancient symbol of deep, earth-bound vitality and the power of life to persist in the soil. To have the scent of mandrakes at the gate is to acknowledge that the sacred flame does not ignore the earthiness of the human condition, but hallows it. This imagery suggests that sacredness is found in the soil. The Shulamite does not become a ghost to find the light. She remains a woman of the vineyard. The pleasant fruits at the gate are the evidence of a life that has integrated the highest spiritual heights with the deepest physical realities. The new and old fruits are no longer stored in a dark cellar, but are displayed at the gate for all to see. The transfigured vineyard is a place where there is no longer a division between the sacred and the secular. Every fruit is a gift, and every scent is a prayer. The feast of the shared portion. The movement reaches its peak with a feast held under the shadows of the vines. The beloved calls to his friends and companions. Eat, O friends, drink, yea, drink abundantly, O beloved. This is the lore of the overflowing table. The joy of the union is too great to be contained within the enclosed garden. It spills over into a celebration that invites the companions to participate in the abundance. This is the lore of the communal light. The secret places of the stairs have led to a public feast. The woman who was once sick of love in her loneliness is now the hostess of a joy that feeds the city. This part of the lore teaches that the ultimate purpose of the sacred flame is to become a sun for others. The transfigured vineyard provides enough for the king, enough for the Shulamite, and enough for every seeker who follows the scent of the spices. The 1,000 pieces of silver are forgotten in the face of a fruit that is given without price. The Sabbath of the soul. The movement concludes with a deep, rhythmic quiet that settles over the vineyard as the feast ends. This is the lore of the finished work. The teacher of Ecclesiastes looked for a Sabbath, but found only vanity because he worked for himself. The Shulamite finds her Sabbath because she works for the beloved. The transfigured vineyard is a place where the curse of the ground has been lifted by the power of love. The woman leans upon her beloved, and they look out over the rows of vines that they have tended together. There's no more anxiety about the little foxes or the rain. The vineyard has become a resting place where the soul can be still and know that the work is good. The transfigured vineyard is the final preparation for the eternal horizon. It is the place where the traveler learns how to live in the light before they finally become a part of it. The high peaks of the mountains are now within reach, and the air is filled with a clarity that the lowlands of the city could never know. The journey that began with a single kiss in the shadows of the palace now concludes in the blinding radiance of the heights. This movement explores the lore of the unfading garden, the final realization that the sacred flame is not a destination we reach, but a state of being we become. It is the history of the endless echo, where the song of the soul merges with the silence of the Creator, the seal of the eternal moment. The lore returns to the image of the seal, but now it is no longer a request, it is a reality. Set me as a seal upon your heart. This is the lore of the finished signature. The heart of the beloved and the heart of the woman have become like two halves of a single tablet. The seal has been pressed so deeply that the image is now part of the substance. This imagery speaks of the victory over time. The teacher of Ecclesiastes lamented that there is no remembrance of former things, but the Song of Solomon declares that love is the great remembrance. The seal is a mark that time cannot erode, and the many waters cannot wash away. The sacred flame has burned away the vapor of vanity and replaced it with the weight of glory. The soul is no longer a guest in the garden of the light. It has become a permanent resident, a pillar that shall go out no more. The mountains of the final leap. The woman looks toward the furthest ridges, the mountains of spices that touch the sky. She speaks her final words to the beloved. Make haste, my beloved, and be thou like to a roe or to a young hart. This is the lore of the perpetual movement. The history ends not in a standing still, but in a flight. In the sacred lore, the end of the journey is simply the beginning of a faster race. This is the lore of the infinite pursuit. Just as a heart finds joy in the leap, the soul finds its fulfillment in the constant haste toward deeper truth and higher love. There is no end to the beloved, and therefore there is no end to the song. The mountains are spices, because every new height reached brings a new fragrance of understanding. The Shulamite is no longer sick of love with longing. She is strong in love with the speed of the heart. The desert is behind her, the city is below her, and the light is before her. The silence of the completed song. As the voices fade, a profound silence settles over the history. This is the lore of the Sabbath of the Spirit. This is not the silence of the grave that the teacher feared, but the silence of the full cup. When the heart is full, words are no longer needed. The Song of Songs concludes because the music has moved into the internal chambers where the one shepherd speaks without sound. This imagery suggests that the ultimate wisdom is peace. The many books that brought weariness to the flesh are replaced by the one word of love. The woman has answered every question of the daughters of the city, has survived the wounding of every watchman, and has tended every vine. She has reached the Sabbath, where the labor is finished and the rest is eternal. The silence is the seal of her peace, a quietness that is louder than the shouting of the marketplace. The legacy of the golden thread. The lore looks back at the golden thread that was woven through every part of the history. From the vineyards of her brothers to the palace of the king, the flame never went out. This is the lore of the unbroken fire. The Shulamite's legacy to the companions is the proof that the sacred flame can survive the thorns and the shadows. The companions in the garden below look up at the mountains and see the trail of fragrance she left behind. They understand now that the song is a map. It shows that the blackness of the sun-scorched skin is a badge of honor, that the search in the night is a test of the heart, and that the leaning on the beloved is the secret of all strength. They take up their own goads and nails and begin their own walk toward the east gate, carrying the echo of her song in their spirits. The return to the source. The movement concludes with the final breath of the song. The sacred flame returns to the source of the light, just as the spirit returns to the Creator. This is the lore of the final reunion. The Song of Solomon ends exactly where the universe began, in the heart of the one who said, "Let there be light." The vineyard of the earth is now a garden of the sky. This is the lore of the eternal horizon. The journey of the teacher and the song of the Shulamite are now one. The vanity has been swallowed up by the victory, and the mist has been burned away by the vehement flame. The history ends with the soul in mid-flight, a row upon the mountains of spices, moving forever deeper into the heart of the beloved. The song is over, but the music is just beginning.